Thanks. My name is April Earle. I am going to give a presentation tonight on Genealogy 101. If this is really for people who have little to no experience in genealogy research, these are the basics. If you're an expert, and sometimes people can't determine their level of expertise in this area, if you've been doing this a while, some of the stuff I'm going to share with you is probably stuff you know already, but I'm hoping you all will be able to get something out of this presentation. I'm going to share my screen. I think I can share this screen. Sorry. All right. So again, this is our basic class 101, getting started. Tell you a little bit about myself. I have been doing genealogy research for well over 30 years. I figured 30 is a big enough number, so I've stopped counting there. It's just going to be 30 plus forever. I'm an academic librarian at Farmingdale State College. I also teach a genealogy course through the library science program at St. John's University. I have a master's in library science and a master's in public history. Some people wonder what public history is, and it's basically how to make history accessible to the public. It's a little like museum studies. I like to tell people how I got started in genealogy research. That's me in a cemetery, by the way, trying to show my cousins where the plot would be. In any case, I attended a Losi family reunion. Now, the Losis are my grandpa Earl's mother's family. And while we were there, my grandmother, who we call Nanny, her brother Richard came with his family. And I was like super confused. Do they just invite any relative? Like, is it for the sandwiches? Like, I didn't understand why these people were here when they were obviously the other side of the family. And while we were there, my grandmother, who we call Nanny, explained to me that her brother Richie had married my grandfather's cousin. Oh, I am so sorry about that. I don't know how to mute my phone. I'll turn the volume all the way down now. Sorry. So my grandmother's brother had married my grandpa's second cousin. And I thought, oh, isn't that cute? Did you introduce them or did they introduce you? Well, Uncle Richie had brought his fiance home to meet his family, and my grandfather was there. And he asked Jeanette, what's your last name? And she said, Losi. And he said, that's my mother's last name. They did not recall ever meeting each other, but it turned out they were second cousins. So I have this set of cousins that are second cousins and fourth cousins, depending on which side of the family you look at. That confused the hell out of me, and I needed to figure it out. Now, at the time, I was only in my teens, and so I began researching this family. One thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're addicted to this kind of research. So today, some of the things I will cover are about Ancestry.com, how to access it, and some of the alternatives. We'll also talk about some of the myths that people have in their minds about this type of research. I'll talk about record keeping. I'll show you some search strategies, and we'll talk about reading some specific type of records, including census records, vital records, and shipped manifests. So first, let's talk about Ancestry.com. Many of you will have access to Ancestry's library edition for free through your public library. There are a few differences between the library version of Ancestry and a private account. The content, though, is exactly the same. It's the same records, whether you're using it from the library or you have your own subscription. Some of the differences include the ability to email other Ancestry users that you can only do from a private account. A private account also has something called a shoebox, where you can save records that might be your family's records to review later, that you only have access to in a private account. But Ancestry is incredibly expensive. So if you have the ability to access it for free from your public library, you should do it. Now, during the pandemic, Ancestry allowed users to access their library edition through their personal account, through their library's account. They don't allow that anymore. Now you have to be in person in your public library to use the library edition. Ancestry.com is not the end-all be-all of online genealogy resources. There is so much to be discovered offline. If we think of Ancestry.com's records as the very tip of the iceberg, and everything that exists is well below the surface, there are archives far and wide that have resources related to family history. So when I talk about Ancestry.com, it really is just a fraction of what you should be looking for when you do this type of research. There's also a website called FamilySearch.org. It's free. It's not as slick and glossy and user-friendly as Ancestry is, but it has much more than Ancestry does. FamilySearch.org is provided by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS. They're members of that church are known as the Mormons. Part of the Mormon faith is to redeem the dead. So when you become a Mormon, the first action you do is to create your family tree. Then when you are baptized into the faith, all your ancestors are sealed with you in the church, which means you get to see them on the other side. That's their belief. And so in doing that, they have created one of the largest genealogical resource libraries in the world. For us really addicted genealogists, Salt Lake City's Family History Library is like Mecca. This is where you want to go. So this practice of theirs of being sealed together in the temple has not been without controversy. There have been many faiths out there, especially those whose families are of Jewish faith, who lost members in the Holocaust, who have lots of issues with this idea of their deceased being baptized into another faith. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their records. And having used their collection, no one has ever tried to make me a Mormon. That's not really what they're doing. They really want you to explore your family's history. So it's definitely a resource you should be using. It is the largest genealogical database available online for free. It has billions of records from all over the world for free. It also includes expert advice, 24-hour support, 7 days a week for free. I hope you're getting that this is for free. And you should avail yourself of this opportunity to use these resources. This is a picture of the actual Family History Library. Again, the Mecca of libraries for genealogists. This is located in Salt Lake City. Now, there are something called family history centers. Family history centers are satellite libraries of the Family History Library. My last check, there were 4,745 research centers, these family history centers around the world. And again, anyone can use them for free. They are typically attached to a Mormon church. I'm here on Long Island. The closest one to me right now is in Plainview. Regardless of your faith, they provide one-on-one assistance in researching your family tree through FamilySearch.org. They also, depending on which family history library you're at, can offer classes. So it's definitely, again, a resource you want to explore. The service will vary from each family history center, which is abbreviated the FHC, but there's one near you, I guarantee. Now, there's something called affiliate libraries. Here on Long Island, Patchogue, Medford Public Library is an affiliate library. I know that for sure. And affiliate libraries have a little more access to records than you would if you were using FamilySearch.org from home. So when you use it from home, you can view lots of things, but there are some things that you can only view if you're at a family history center. The affiliate library is kind of in between. You can view a little more at an affiliate library than you can view at home, but not as much as you can view if you're at a family history center. Hope that makes sense. So here's a few myths I'm going to tell you about. Everything is online. No, that is wrong. Almost nothing is online when you look at how much is out there to research. Very little is online. Another myth, I often hear people will say that, oh, there are no records. It was destroyed in the war. I don't know what war they're talking about. Maybe they're talking about World War II and Europe. World Trade Center was bombed here in the United States. My birth certificate still exists. Just because there was a war and records may have been destroyed doesn't mean all records have been destroyed. There's a lot of stuff that has existed, maybe not in the form that you're expecting it to, but there are lots of other ways to look for records. And your family name was not changed at Ellis Island. A lot of people have that myth in their family, but there is actually no account of a ship manifest being altered at Ellis Island. If your family name appears differently on a ship manifest than what you are told the original family name was, that was changed before they got on the boat. No actual ship manifest was ever altered at Ellis Island. I always tell my students when I present this to them, I say, I'll fight you in the parking lot if you want to take it up later. But we're going to look at those three myths a little closer. We're going to talk about keeping records. When you start your research, you need to document yourself. I tell everybody this, but I don't know if they actually do it. Your birth certificate should be the very first piece of genealogical documentation in your collection. 100 years from now, some descendant of yours or your siblings will find your stuff and their first question will be, who did this? So you want to make sure you document yourself. Family history research is about finding documentation that links people together. That's what it's about. So your birth certificate is the documentation that links you to your parents. You want that in your collection. If you are married, you want your marriage record in that collection. We're going to talk a little bit about filling in a family tree, which is also known as a pedigree chart. This here is a pedigree chart. They call this a 6th generation pedigree chart. To me, this is a 5-generation pedigree chart. It has a little section here where you can list your children. It's not really how it's done. Your children would be the root of the tree, and then you would wind up being the parents to those children. But I'm talking about your family tree. This chart I got from an organization called MISBOC. And that URL is in the handout that I've provided. MISBOC.org provides free genealogical charts in the form of downloadable, rewritable PDFs. So you get this as a digital form. You can fill it in with your information and save it to your computer and have it digitally. A form is not documentation. This is an organizational tool. This helps to show you what information you have collected and what's missing. This is not proof of someone's birth, marriage, death, burial, or baptism. This is a place for you to organize your information. When I work one-on-one with someone, this is the first thing I pull out, pedigree chart. I start to ask them all sorts of questions. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your father. Do you remember your grandparents? And I fill one of these in. Then as I research, I can add more information to this. If you're working on Ancestry, this is what you're working in. You're working in a family tree. But I use these all the time, and I love them digitally, so you should try accessing one of them that way. There's also something called a family group sheet. When you start to talk about aunts and uncles and cousins, they don't fit nice on that family tree. That just shows your direct ancestors. So if you want to record information about your grandparents and all their children, you want to use something called a family group sheet. It looks like this. It has a place for the couple at the top, traditionally a husband and a wife, and then their offspring. Some families are bigger than 8 people. They have more than 8 kids. I think they're nuts, but they have more than 8 kids. And so sometimes you need multiple sheets for the same family group. But this provides you a place to record the couple's names, their birth dates, where they were married, when they died. For the children, it allows space for you to put in their spouses' names. This is how you organize the information you've collected on a family group. Now, again, family trees and family group sheets are not documentation. Documentation are the records that link individuals to each other through things like the census, vital records, which include birth, marriage, and death records, maybe ship manifests, property deeds, land grants, wills. All sorts of documentation exists. Again, for free charts, I recommend missback.org, or you can just Google free pedigree charts, or if you go to ancestry.com/download/charts, you'll find a plethora of charts used to organize genealogy research. Talk about some search strategies. The more detail you put into your search, the fewer number of hits you get. I like to present the example of John Smith, who was born in 1900 in New York and dies in 1950 in New York. When you do these searches, you need to think about variant spellings of names, maybe alternate names, nicknames, maiden names, middle names. When you think about yourself, I professionally use my middle name all over the place. I am April Lynn Earl. That's not what my family calls me. My sisters all call me A. My driver's license has my full name on it. My credit card has my middle initial in it. Your name doesn't always present in the same exact way, right? So you need to think about that. You also need to think about spelling. Spelling absolutely never counts. My last name is Earl. It has a silent E on it. If you send me a piece of mail today and it doesn't have a silent E on it, if it's a bill, it's going in the garbage. My name has a silent E on it. But spelling is a very modern convention. 100 years ago, prior to Social Security, you could use whatever name you wanted. It was common for people to have aliases. And if I'm an immigrant speaking with a heavy, say, French accent to someone who is also an immigrant recording it, let's say they're Italian, they might spell it entirely differently than it really was spelled. So this idea of spelling, you have to give it up. You have to be comfortable with finding something that's not spelled right. For example, my great-grandfather, who was born in Twillingate, Newfoundland, last name Earl, all his Newfoundland documents show up without the silent E. Here in the US, all his documents have an E on the end. It's him. And I can verify that it's him through other aspects of the record. For instance, the birth date is the same, or the address is the same, or the mother's maiden name matches. So when I'm doing a search for John Smith, born in 1900 in New York, who also died in 1950 in New York, this is how it goes. I start with all the Johns, then it overlaps with all the Smiths, so I get the smaller square of John Smiths. Then I want to isolate that to just the ones in New York. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller until you can pinpoint the place you need to look. So when you're constructing a search, you don't want to put in every detail you know. You want to start kind of broad. You want to put in a first name, a last name, maybe a year of birth, and sometimes you just want to keep it to the state. And you'll see that Ancestry will ask you the place your ancestor might have lived. They're not asking where your ancestor was born here. The birth line is where they're asking for that, and you don't have to fill it in. Fill in the details that you want. You might throw in the date of death there, especially since you're dealing with a name like Smith. And this is the kind of results you'll get. So my John Smith, with those 2 dates in New York in there, I got back 5 million hits. That is a lot to search through in a single afternoon, right? So there are other ways to reduce this even more. On the left-hand side, you'll see that you can filter by category. So if you know you're looking for a census record, you can just click and drill down to the spot and the type of record that you want. Often, the very first thing that will appear in someone's results list is someone else's family tree. Well, let me warn you about other people's family trees. There's a lot of crappy research out there. I have an example, I hope that I put that in there, of my 3rd great grandfather. Maybe it's my 5th great grandfather. He had a very unfortunate name. His name was Hugh Bagg. I think it's terrible. But anyway, somebody transposed numbers in his date of death. And that mistake has been replicated over and over and over again as people copy the information. When you look at someone's family tree on Ancestry, look and see how many resources they have attached to that person. If you're seeing the only resource they have attached is someone else's Ancestry family tree, do not trust that. That is a hint. That gives you a potential Ancestry user to communicate with who you might be related to. But that is not a document. That is not a fact. So if I had clicked on census, you'll see that it will open another way to drill further down. So if I only want to find the 1940 census for John Smith in New York, I can get further down. Now, tomorrow is a very exciting day. None of you can talk to me tomorrow because the 1950 census is released to the public tomorrow. And I'll talk to you more about census in a little bit. But at present, today, it all changes tomorrow, but today, the most recently available census is the 1940. And we'll look more at census in a bit. But once I have drilled down to just the 1940 census, you'll see those results of millions that I have before has been cut down to 100,000s, right? It's still a lot. We're still talking about John Smith's in New York. It's a lot, but by drilling down, you've reduced the amount of information you have to deal with significantly. Now, let's see. There are some negative sides to Ancestry.com. One I've already talked about is the quality of the research. It still requires you to do the old-fashioned things, to use libraries, to go to archives, to call cemeteries, to look at vital records. And I'm going to show you Hugh. I'm glad he's listed on here. Ancestry.com has 10 members who have created family trees that are connected to my Hugh Bagg. 5 of those 10 trees list his date of birth as 1759 and his date of death as 1906. That is not possible. There is no way he lived to be 143 years old. Yet, multiple people have this data in their family tree. They've not looked, they've just copied. So here's an example of it. Here on the right, you will see my family tree where I have him listed. He was born in 1763 from what I have found, and he died in 1826, not 1906, not 1906. And yet people have copied it like crazy. So you want to be careful. You want to look at real records. You don't want to just copy someone else's family tree. So I'm going to talk about a few different kinds of records. The first being a census. A census is a snapshot in time. I've had people ask me if the census tells me when their relative died. Not unless the census taker was psychic, because they came to that door on April 1st, 1950, and they asked questions about who was living in that household. They weren't asking questions about who their father was or who their great-grandfather was, when their birth and death dates were. They were asking about who was living in that house today. The census is a very important type of record to use in genealogy research. We spend a lot of time talking about it. That is because the census groups together family sets, people who are living together, and it provides basic demographic information that helps you to track down other type of records. Some censuses record immigration dates. They record months of birth. Some of them will tell you whether someone living at the residence had served in the military. So you really want to be able to read a record. Now, in general, a census is a systematic recording of information about a specific population. Here in the US, we do it every 10 years. Federal censuses are recorded on the zero. But there are other places that take census. If any of you have read the Bible, Mary and Joseph are on their way while she is pregnant to be counted in a census. Jesus was born on the way to a census. It's existed for a long time. It's a regularly occurring, typically every 10 years, official government count of a population. They exist for other states, other countries, provinces, religious bodies. There's all sorts of censuses out there. Now, in Canada and most European countries, they take their census on the years ending in 1. Here in the US, we take our census in years ending in 0. So we're going to talk about the US federal census. This is a quick summary of what happens in all the census. In the US, the census began in 1790. From 1790 through 1840, these census really only named the head of household. And then it has these little check marks for how many men, how many women, what ages they were living in that house. It's not until the 1850 census when the US federal census starts to record each household member. Sometimes the 1850 census tends to be a barrier. It's hard to get back to the 1840 sometimes. But 1850 lists every household member. 1860 had a separate slave schedule, also in the 1850s. It included the name of the slave owner, and then it counted each of the slaves simply by sex and age. They were not named. This can prove to be a hard spot to pass if you are doing African American research. It's not impossible to get beyond 1870, but it can be a challenge. 1870 is incredibly important because this is the first census where former slaves are now recorded by name. Prior to 1870, prior to the Civil War, they were not recorded by name. Again, in 1860, they're just counted by age. and sex. The 1880 census is the first one to identify the relationship between the head of household and all the people living there. Before that, we would make this assumption that the man listed here is the father and the next oldest woman is the mother. That's not always the case. Sometimes he's a widow and his sister is the oldest woman helping to take care of those children. So in 1850, we start to make assumptions about the relationships between heads of household. In 1880, that assumption is gone. It's telling you how they are connected to that head of household. Now, the 1890 census is a tragedy for most genealogists. It was destroyed by a fire. Didn't actually all burn up. It was destroyed by putting out a fire. The flooding is what destroyed that. About 1% of it still survives. Those are from states and counties that were late in returning their census information, so it was stored somewhere else. But the 1890 does not exist. And it's a shame because there was a lot of immigration prior between 1880 and 1890. And now you have to make the jump from 1880, 20 years to 1900, right? That's a big jump. A lot changed. 1900 is the only US census to report the month and year of birth for each person named, as well as the first census to report the year of immigration. It also includes something called the maternity questions. This is where they asked every adult female how many times she had given birth and how many living children she had. And if you look at those numbers, it is startling to me how many women lost children. These questions also exist in the 1910 census. So you might want to do a comparison between what you see in 1900 and what you see in 1910 and determine if additional children had been lost. The 1920 census is the only one that requests the year a person was naturalized. That would tell you if there are naturalization papers you should be looking for that ancestor. The 1930 tells you whether the family had a radio in the house. Why might that be? It's because during the Depression, that's how our president was communicating with the country. And so they wanted to know how many people were able to hear what the president was going to be telling them. Now, the 1940, again, as of today, is the most recently available. It was released on April 2nd in 2012. They are only released every 72 years with the thought that is life expectancy. So if someone has lived beyond 72 years, they will certainly not be living with the same family set 72 years later, right? So it's a measure of protection to protect the identity of our people, our Americans. Now, the 1950 comes out tomorrow, and I will be buried in that until I find all my peoples. It'll be the first one in which my grandparents are married, well, one set of my grandparents, and it'll be the first one I'll be able to see my dad in, which is kind of funny because the 1941 was the first I could see my grandmother in. She was born in 1931. My father was born in 1949, so. I'm going to show you some census examples, the first of which is my great-grandfather in 1930, and then another one is a client I worked for in 1940. So my grandpa's name is Abram Earl. I searched for him forever, and I could not find him. Why? Because he is indexed with a C. If we look at the original, and you always want to look at the actual image of the census, you will see that my great-grandpa's last name is an E. But somebody looked at that and it looked like a C to them. And so he got transcribed in the index as Carl. You always want to look at the image. Do not trust the index for this very reason. The way I found this is when I did my search, I took out the last name and I searched for Abram. I knew where he was born. I knew how old he was, and his wife's name was Ethel. Not a lot of Abram and Ethels walking around together. So I was able to find them, and I knew what community they should be in. Back before Ancestry, to search the census, you had to use microfilm, and I would sit there and roll through microfilm for hours and hours on end. It was impossible for me to find this until it was digitized and indexed. So that's how I found them. Now, this was a man I was doing research for, Myron Simpson. And when I did the search, I knew they were living in Rockville Center, but this family comes up listed as Black. Now, certain years of the US Census will list African Americans as Negro. I've had clients who hate that term and want that changed, but that is what it is listed as. Have to take the records with the understanding of what the terminology was at the time and why the record was being created. So this is a population count. I know this family is white. I almost didn't open this record because it said they were Black. If I click on the view over here and actually looked at the record, you can clearly see that race is W. It's indexed wrong. This is a white family. And so you can't trust the index is my point. You have to look at the actual record. While you're looking at the indexed page though, that's what this is, indexed information, you'll see off to the right a suggested records section. You should look through these. These might be your people. They might not be your people, but they might be. So you should go through all those suggested records. They are likely also going to be records that come up if you do a search. Back in your search list of all those John Smiths, these records are likely there. But Ancestry is got an algorithm that's pulling together these records that other users have connected to your person. So make sure you explore your suggested records. Next thing I'll talk about is vital records. Now, vital records are a primary source to an event, and I'll explain that further. So birth, marriage, death records, death certificates are a primary source to a specific event. So for example, a birth certificate will be most accurate about who the parents' names are, right? They're standing there. That baby isn't reporting the information. That couple is telling you their names. A marriage certificate will be most accurate about the date the marriage occurred on. It will list the couple's parents' names, but those are the names that the bride and groom reported. So if you are dealing with someone who does not know their birth father died or realize that they have a stepfather they might identify as their father, that will appear on the marriage record sometimes. It'll be different from the birth certificate because there's primary information on each one. Now, a death certificate will list parents' names as well, but those are names that are provided by the informant. It's not the dead guy who's telling you what his parents' names were. It's an informant. Sometimes it's a spouse. Sometimes it's a child of the deceased. Sometimes it's someone in the same apartment building. Sometimes it's a nurse in a hospital. Sometimes you think, oh, the spouse or the child, they'll know what their in-laws or their grandparents' name was. That's not always true either. When my grandfather died, my mother called me to ask me what her grandfather's first name was. And I said it was Albert. She said, no, I had an uncle Albert. It had to be Edward. So my grandfather's death certificate says that his father's name is Edward. It's not, it's Albert. My mother did not know her grandfather because he died before my mother was born. So sometimes the child of the deceased doesn't have all the information. If you can't find a vital record, the Social Security Death Index and claim and application data set is a good substitute for information about birth and death. And I'm going to show you how you can search just in these data sets. So you'll notice here on Myron's index page of the 1940, over here, there's a link to a Social Security application and claims index. If you were to click on that link, it opens this page. Now, this is not Myron's Social Security information. This is the information for his child. Okay. Down here, there is information about the source. People never read this. People never read, says the librarian. You need to read this information. It's going to describe to you the type of information that is in this data set. A data set just being the US Social Security Application and Claims Index from 1936 to 2007, right? Now, if we were to click on Gertrude's name, it would open her information, and you will see that it tells you what her name is, her married name, her date of birth, who her parents were, when she died. You're getting quite a bit of information. So the Social Security records are a decent substitute if you can't find a birth and death certificate. It's a good substitute. If you are in Ancestry and you click on the title of a record set at the top, it will bring you to a page where you can search specifically in that record set. You fill it in. Another way to search for a specific record set, Ancestry is a database. This is a record set. If you go through the card catalog, so underneath search, there is a drop-down menu that will bring you to what they call the card catalog. When you click on that, you can search by title or keyword for all sorts of different record sets. I typically use keyword because you have to get the title correct. And if you don't know it, maybe I just want to see what kind of Irish records or Polish records they have in there. I'll throw a keyword in. And that is how to use Ancestry for vital records. Now, I'm excited to tell you about this. So I think everybody should be aware of the New York City Municipal Archives records. Even though you think that your family didn't live in New York City, it's reported that even though Ellis Island did not open until 1892, 40% of Americans, approximately 150 million Americans, have at least one ancestor who came through Ellis Island. If they came through Ellis Island, it is likely that they lived in the city of New York for a short period of time. In that time that they lived there, some life event could have happened to them. Could have gotten married, could have had some kids, could have died in the city of New York. So you really want to know how to access these records. Now, just 2 weeks ago, New York City made their birth, marriage, and death records digitally available online for free in color. And I'm going to show that to you. For the last 30 years of my research, I have had to order them or go in person to New York City Municipal Archives to look at birth, marriage, and death records. Now, I've been doing, for the last 2 weeks, I've been doing it in the comfort of my living room. So there is a big difference between finding something in an index or even looking at the image of something and actually having the certificate. There's stuff that comes up on a certificate that isn't going to be in an index. So you want to look at it. So for example, a birth certificate, it'll tell you the location where the birth occurred. It'll tell you the name of the midwife who delivered them, or what hospital or what doctor. An index won't tell you that. A marriage record will show you the location, maybe the priest or minister or rabbi who married them, as well as the name of the witnesses who are sometimes family members. A death certificate will tell you the cause of death. You won't get that in an index. So I'm going to show you, this is a little dated since you can now get them online, but I'm going to show you that at the end. But this is an example of my great grandpa, Albert Gardner, who was married in the city of New York. This is what the New York Marriage License Index looks like in Ancestry. All it tells you is the name of the husband, the spouse, the gender of the person you're looking at, the marriage license date, and the marriage license number, which in the past I would tell you to record and order from the city. But that doesn't tell you much, right? If you're dealing with Smith, it doesn't tell you that that's your John Smith. If you looked at it in Family Search, it would give you much more information in the index, including the couple's parents' names, which is really important in determining whether your commonly named ancestor is exactly the individual whose records you've tracked down. Now, it would say over here that the image is available, and then you would have to go to a family history center and you could look at the image there because you couldn't see it at home and you couldn't see it in an affiliate library. Had to go to a family history center to see it. That was great. That was a great substitute of having to pay $20 every time you wanted a record. This is what the actual record looks like for their marriage. Big difference. One of my favorite parts is the back of the document. You don't see that in the index. That's Albert and Mamie's signatures, which for some people is a very moving experience to see the signature of their family member. Now, this is Albert's death certificate in Ancestry. Again, just his date of death, approximately how old he was, the certificate number, the county he died in. This is it in Family Search. Again, it's giving me the parents' names, the spouse's name. It's telling me to go view it in a family history center. This is the actual certificate. What that index does not tell you is that he died at Creedmoor in Queens, which for those of you in the New York City area know that Creedmoor is a mental asylum. And apparently he was a resident there suffering from schizophrenia, but he actually died of a heart attack. Other information that this will tell you is that his parents were both born in Canada. That wasn't in those indexes. It's telling you how long he was a resident of that hospital. It's telling you what cemetery he was buried at. It's telling you who gave this information. It's also showing you the back of the certificate where it indicates that his death in a hospital was non-traumatic. What else does it tell you? It tells you the attending doctors, the funeral parlor that handled his body, all sorts of information that you don't get in an index. So you want to look at these certificates. So you could order records from the New York City Municipal Archives, and you could order them online, or you could go in person and look at them at Chambers Street in Manhattan. To look in person was free. To order a copy in person was cheaper than ordering it online. But I am going to show you what it looks like to search for them. Now, let me see. Can I stop? Actually, I'll do it at the end as not to interrupt the flow of my presentation. You could also have gone to a family history center to view those records. And after my presentation, I'll pull up the website and show you how you do it. The last record I want to talk about reading is called Ship Manifests. Your name was not changed at Ellis Island. Prior to Ellis Island, there was something called Castle Garden. That opened in 1808, and nearly 11 million immigrants passed through Castle Gardens. If you've ever gone to Ellis Island, when you're standing on line to get on the boat, behind you, there's this ruined building. That's Castle Garden. At some point, New York decided they didn't want their immigrants to so easily leave and scatter into the living people of their city. So they put it on this isolated island. Now, keep in mind that New York was not the only port of immigration, and that most ship manifests have 2 pages. It'll often list on a ship manifest who the immigrant is leaving behind in their homeland and who they're going to join in the US. So you want to read it. When you do a search in Ancestry, you will get a ship manifest like this. Now, if you notice the title of the document, it just ends United. United what? There's a second page, a list or manifest of alien passengers for the United States. So there are 2 pages, and you will find your person on a particular line and you'll lead all the way across. This section will identify the individual. It'll tell you their age, where they're coming from, what their occupation is, nationality, race, the last place they lived. This section, which is the end of the first page and the beginning of the second page, tells you who they're leaving behind. This woman is leaving her father, tells you his name, and it tells you where they're going to live when they're here in the United States. That gives you a lead on where to search for other resources. I'm just looking at my timer. I realized I've gone towards the end. I hope it's not too long. The end of this record gives you information about the individual that you might not otherwise learn, like how tall she was. She was 5'6". She had brown hair and brown eyes. You might not find that on other sort of records. So you want to make sure you read. So in summary, when you do your research, you're going to start with yourself and you're going to move backwards in time, 1 generation at a time, connecting a child to the parent. You want to capture all the information that you can from your living family members. You want to create those pedigree charts and family group sheets to organize the information that you're finding. You want to make sure you find every census, 1 decade at a time. Track your person through it. Please remember that spelling never counts. Think phonetically about the names you're looking for and how it might be spelled a different way. You always want to look at the actual document whenever possible and affordable. And you want to make sure you read the whole document. So before I open it up to questions, I want to thank the people who helped me make my slides. Slides Carnival. It's a great site if you ever have to do a PowerPoint presentation. This is also my contact information. You can email me that's my business email. There's also my phone number, and it's also on the handout that I've sent. So let me, I think I have to stop sharing for a second and find my, yeah, okay, sorry. I'm going to share my screen for 1 more second. So this website, the URL I gave you on the handout, is where you can go to the New York City Department of Records and Information and search through their historical documents. If you have a certificate number you found in a database, you can fill it in by the year and district, or if you just want to throw in a name. Let's see. John Joyce, looking for a death certificate. I don't know what county or what year it is, but I click search. It's going to pull back vital records, death certificates. If you want to search all the counties, you can click on this and choose all counties and then click update. You can narrow it by years that you're looking for. And then you scroll through the results. You'll see the year is up front in the death certificate. So if you're looking for a death certificate, 1901, here is the death certificate. You can download it, save it to your computer for free, or you can purchase a copy from the archives. I don't know why at this point you would want to copy a historical document, pay for it like that, but it's available to you. So you can download it to your computer, you can print it out, save it, add it to your collection. And with that, I will stop sharing and open this to questions. Anybody?
I just set it up. So if anyone has a question, you can click your mic to unmute and ask now, or you could type it in the chat, whichever you prefer.
So if you don't know where somebody died, how do you, is there a way to find a death certificate?
So vital records are managed by the state in which the incident occurred. My great grandmother is buried here on Long Island, and I searched for years trying to find her death certificate. Then I found her obituary. She died in Florida, and her body was transported home to New York and buried here. So I had to order her death certificate from Sarasota, Florida. Sometimes you have to think outside what you think you know. You forget everything you think you know and think about where else this might have occurred. You have to look on Ancestry, look on Ancestry, look on Family Search, see where it could have been. And then you would have to order it from the individual state. Or in New York, you order it from the state unless it happened in the city of New York. Then you order it from the city of New York.
How far back do death certificates go?
Typically in the US, they start in the 1880s. New York State started theirs in 1881. Prior to that, you would have to depend on church registers for baptisms or synagogue records. So I see some questions about what about searching in Europe? So you can search for European records through Ancestry and Family Search. There's lots on there. One of the things that I would cover in a Genealogy 102 would be using Family Search's wiki. It has a section called the Research Wiki, and you can put in any country or city and it will show you how to access information. Not everything is digital and online. There are still times when you have to write a letter to an archive in a different country in a different language to request information. Sometimes you have to hire a researcher abroad to do that search for you, but it can be done. It can be done.
Hello.
Yes.
What about when didn't New York not have any birth certificates in hospitals until 1907?
I'm not aware of that. I have found birth certificates prior to 1907 for sure. There, in fact, the birth record index only goes up till 1906. So there are birth records for the 1880s through today. Birth records are created.
Oh, and what about with census people who misspell everything? I mean, doesn't that affect whom you're looking for?
Yes, you have to think of variant spellings. You have to try spelling it a different way than you think it should be spelled. Absolutely, spelling affects it. Okay. There is something called soundexing, where if you do a search by soundex, it's going to pull up names that sound the same. So all the Simpsons, all the Sampsons, all the Sincotts will probably come up together. That did not work for my Earls who were indexed as Carls. Doesn't work. I see there is a question about the separate slave schedules. They are a data set in Ancestry and Family Search. So when you go to do your search in the card catalog, you can just type in slave schedule and it'll bring you to that data set. Again, the slave schedules, though, only recorded the owner's names, not the names of the slaves themselves. Slaves were only recorded by sex and age.
Obituaries? How do you
Oh,
find those?
Which point in your research do you recommend looking for obituaries? And is newspapers.com a place to start? You should be looking for obituaries all the time. The day your dead people happen, you should be copying some obituaries. They're the greatest resource out there. They are challenging to find because just like vital records, they will only be printed and published in newspapers that are local to that. My obituary will not appear in the New York Times. It'll be in some local newspaper that might not be indexed, might not be digitized. Newspapers is great resource. It is expensive. It is not available for access through every public library. Some have it, some don't. Some public libraries love to let anybody use their resources. Some people require that you live in the area to use their public library. So I know Patchogue, which is an affiliate library in Suffolk County. When I say affiliate library, they're affiliated with Family Search. They have newspapers.com and you can go in and search them. You can also subscribe to newspapers.com independently of Ancestry, but Ancestry owns it. So you can add it as sort of like a module to your Ancestry account. It's pricey, but I use it all the time.
April,
Yes. Hi,
I'm sorry.
Barbara.
how to work this too well, so I have to do this. A two-part question. I had no idea that the municipal archives, that you could get free documents now. How do you get money to do that?
So the URL is in the handout that I gave to your library director, Ariel, and she will send it out to everyone who
Oh, good. Okay.
signed up. But I know Barbara, I can email it to you. And I've
Right.
spent the
I'm so
last 2
excited
weeks.
that you said, you're like, wow. I had
I've spent the
no-
last 2 weeks looking for every death certificate I could possibly find.
Okay, and the second part of my question, I'm sorry, is the New York City historical data records. Now, I have been trying for at least 3 years to get my father's birth certificate. Second try was last July. I sent them their check for $15. I sent them everything they asked for. They wanted a raised sealed death certificate, which I didn't send to them. I just sent a regular copy. So I had one, thank goodness. I sent it to them. 4 months later, they sent it back to me. This is this past July now. 4 months later, they sent it back to me. They cashed my check for $15 and they said, we will do this in the order, just a little line. We will do this in the order that as we get to it.
Yep.
I actually had his certificate number because I had a
Yep.
very bad negative, what do they call those? The negative birth certificates. They're black, the photo, microfiche or something.
Oh, yeah, the microfilm reversal. So it was a black
able
document. Okay.
Decipher it barely, and I put that in there. It's almost a year and I have got nothing.
Yeah,
from it.
welcome to COVID. COVID shut down many libraries, reduced the facility operators to, I mean, here at the library, we were coming in 2 people. That's it, not 8, not our 8 librarians, but 2. And so the rate at which these requests are being made to the counties and the states and the cities, they're being filled slowly. I waited over a year for a document I ordered from the National Archives.
But didn't you just say that you can get them free now on historical data?
Yes,
How do you do-
you can use that URL and look for it. But it will only be in those date ranges that have been made available. And on that page, you will see, it'll tell you whether it's been digitized yet or not. So it might not be available, but I'll email you, Barbara.
That, okay, great, thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anything else?
No, no, that's it for me.
Um,
Okay.
If anyone else has questions, I sent the the handout that April's talked about to the email you used to attend Zoom, like whatever you registered with. So
I
it should be in your email. You can always check your spam if you don't see it. But
I
if
can
you-
also paste it in while we're talking about it into the chat.
okay, yeah, and then
Um,
you all, hopefully it will be a link you can just click.
Yeah, so I know once Zoom closes, this chat will disappear. So if you want this link, oh no, that I just sent it to Sharon. I wanted to send it to everyone. Sorry, Sharon. There you go.
Okay, it worked for me, I think. Oh, this is the historical vital records. That's the link, right?
Yes, these are the New
Yep.
York City vital records. Now, if your people are from Oklahoma, they're not there. You'll need to contact Oklahoma. And in a second level course, I would sort of show you how to look at each state, but each state manages their own vital records.
Can you do a follow-up one? This was fantastic.
I was
Oh,
going
I'd be
Got
happy
a
to.
couple head shaking.
Yes, please. This has been great. Very clear.
Yes,
I'd be happy
Yeah.
to. Yeah,
Oh, good,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
you're
And then
very
you-
welcome.
Never stop learning, really. That's
No,
why.
I do
I-
all the time too. I learn all sorts of new stuff every day. I'm looking at things. I figure I learned something new. I was recently researching my family in Freeport and discovered that my great grandmother's brother-in-law was the chief of the fire department, something new, right? And that's by going through a book. People, you got to go through books still. But yeah, I'd be happy to present again on more
Well,
advanced
great.
topics.
April, when there's a question in the chat that I'm wondering whether you could get to in the next session or the session after that. Someone posed the question, what about searching in Europe? So if you find that,
Mm.
2 generations ago, they were in France or Italy or Germany, is there?
European records are available on Ancestry. They're also available on Family Search. The Family Search Wiki is something you would explore if you're looking for European records. But Ancestry definitely has European records.
Thank you.
Again, it's only a little tiny bit of what really exists out there, but yeah, you can find some European records online.
So what happens tomorrow?
Oh my God,
Computers
you can't-
explode,
you
crash?
can't talk to me tomorrow. I'm busy.
I mean, does your computer go off in lights or what?
Probably,
what's gonna happen?
probably. It's like genealogy Christmas. It's the most exciting thing when a new census comes out. Now, the 1940 census released, they did this crowdsourcing of the index where they asked the public if they wanted to index, and you volunteered and they sent you pages and you went through and you created that index. It was great. I loved it. I only did a small section. But the 1950 census has been indexed by artificial intelligence.
Oh,
So they're using optical character recognition, or OCR, to determine if what those names are. So let's see how well that works this time. It's always different. I'm curious about finding my father in there. My great grandparents were still alive. I mean, there's lots to be discovered in every
it'll be
census.
the time I'm gonna be on it.
Yay, you're gonna find yourself. It's awesome.
Very exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting. I can't wait to see it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much to April Earl for sharing this wonderful knowledge.
Of course.
Yes.
And please keep an eye out for Amagansett Library's future programs that will hopefully feature April, and also the Southampton History Museum, who co-sponsored this.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Thank you
much.
for coming.
April and Ariel, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Good
wonderful night,
night.
everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.